Hello everyone, on today's lockdown interview I'm joined by the current Latvian road race champion Skujiņš, who rides for Trek-Segafredo. He has had particular success in the Tour of California with 3 stage wins to his name, along with the Mountains classification jersey, and he even wore the leader's jersey whilst riding for the continental side in Cappy Sportswear, and one of his stage win celebrations even went viral. Here is the interview with Torms himself. Enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Cycling Dane YouTube channel. I'm delighted to be joined by Skujiņš today of Trek-Segafredo. How are you doing, Torms? And how was my pronunciation?
I'm good. The pronunciation was better than like 99%. So you're up there with the Latvians for sure.
That's good. So where are you, first of all, right now? Are you in Latvia or are you in Spain?
I am in Girona, Spain. Whereas like my in theory my base for the season. However, even though it's not really the season, I'm still here just because, well, I kind of got stuck here, but I also didn't want to go back home and travel when it got risky to risk bringing anything to Latvia that I didn't want to.
How's the lockdown affecting your training? Are you doing more kind of swift now, indoor training?
Yeah, I mean, since March 15th, we've been riding. Well, 15th, I was still riding outside, even though apparently I was not supposed to. But I didn't know that because they just suddenly last minute changed it from starting Monday to starting Sunday. But we didn't get in any trouble. And even the people that got stopped by the police, they were just told that you were not supposed to ride outside. But yeah, so since March 16th, it's been like 50 days or something. It's been a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been mostly either riding indoors, and then luckily I have a garage with a few bit of weights. So I've also been weight training a bunch.
What were your 2020 goals before the lockdown?
Well, one of the first goals that actually was the first race that got canceled, postponed maybe. I guess we'll see. We'll find out. Was Strade. I was really looking forward to that one, but I actually got sick before Strade, so I was not going anyway. So maybe actually I got lucky that that it might happen still this year. But other than that, obviously the Spring Classics as always, and then hopefully going to the Tour and hopefully going to the Olympics for sure.
One of the races that, has kind of been synonymous with your career, the Tour of California, was actually cancelled before the season even started. How was that for you, seeing that race cancelled and then hopefully rejuvenated later on?
Yeah, I mean, not many times you see races go away and then come back. So I was not really, I mean, when they said it was going to be canceled, I hope it comes back, but I think it's going to be hard, especially now. It's going to be even harder with all this. But yeah, I mean, it is really one of the most fun races you do in the year because it's pretty relaxed and you get to go back to the States and you get to interact with people. There's a lot less hype around it, but it's still hard racing. There's just less stress around the race and also in the race. So it's a nice time to like take a mental break while still keeping really fit and maybe do some altitude either before or after. Because altitude in the States is a little bit easier to do actually than in Europe, just because you don't have to be on top of a mountain. You can actually be in a city or in a town or whatever. So I really always enjoy that. And I mean, it is really, really unfortunate. But at the same time, I really enjoy California, but I don't want to do the same exact races every year as well.
So you actually rode for American Continental team in Cappy Sportswear, and that was when you in 2015, that's when you won your first Tour of California stage. What was it like coming into that Tour of California? Were you expecting to do a result? Well, what were the goals of the team at that point?
Already in 2014, when I was first on the team, we were obviously hoping to get into California, but they announced the teams, because I mean it's a huge race for the domestic teams, but they announced already the teams selected before we even got to race a single race in the US. So we didn't even get the chance to prove ourselves. And then the first race, actually, the Redlands Classic, we won with Joey Roscoff, who after that went on to the World Tour and is riding now for CCC and also lives in Girona. But yeah, in 2015, we were obviously all super stoked that we got the invite, and obviously it was the biggest race of the year for us, because we were racing against the World Tour riders, we were racing against the biggest teams in the world, and obviously we wanted to prove ourselves in whatever way that we could.
So you took the breakaway win that day, and that meant that you actually had the leader's jersey. What was it like being, in a way, hunted down by Peter Sagan in the general classification?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy that I also got the leader's jersey. I also had lost a little bit of time the day before, because there was a huge pileup and with like more than 3K to go, but within 10K to go. So just because the speed was high, some guys got back, but that was not really 100% legal, let's say, the way they did it. And I was one of the guys that, just chased on my own. And, but I lost 30 seconds. So the gap that I won by was big enough that I still got the leader's jersey. And the next day it was kind of crazy, just because, for one, it doesn't happen often that in such a big race a Conti rider has the leader's jersey. And I got a lot of pats on the back from some big riders, and it was super cool, and a feeling that will stay with me for a long time for sure.
Were you based in the US when you were riding for Hincapie?
Yeah, more or less. I was usually every year I would go over in mid to late February when we'd have our first training camp, and then I'd stay until June, when I'd come back to Latvia for nationals, do nationals, probably stay a little bit after nationals till July, and then would go late July, I would go back to the US to get ready for the altitude races, Utah, Colorado, Cascade, maybe. One year I did Cascade as well. And then, Alberta, Reading. And then by the end of September, I would usually already be back in Europe.
How was the racing season riding for Hincapie compared to like the European scene? Like when you rode for the French continental team, Pomme Massé?
Yeah, it was definitely shorter, just because you'd start racing in like March or late March, whereas in France you start racing January 31st or something. Like the first race in Marseille is already one of the first races of the European season, and I did that when I was there. So it was definitely a lot shorter. And less race days, but at the same time, I think maybe even the race days were more packed together. But it gave you more time to train in between the races, or get ready actually to prepare for the races, because when you're racing in January, like a lot of times you're not actually ready to race. You're just racing because you're racing. Obviously, I've never been one to actually be super good in January or February. I always need some time. So for me, it was actually good to not have to race already January 1st,
And keeping along with the Tour of California, in the very next year, you came back with a new team. You were part of the World Tour. How was it being part of a World Tour team as opposed to a continental team?
The cool thing about being on Cannondale when we did Cali the first year I was there was that we had an RV and a chef, and we actually ate on the RV and had our food cooked for us. It's not like the food in California is bad, but it's just a touch better having actually a chef at a race. So it was really cool, and I mean, you get a lot more respect from the people around you in general when you're racing in a World Tour jersey. And also because I was a previous stage winner and a previous yellow jersey holder, people recognized me more. And yeah, it was cool.
And then in 2017, you won a stage again in 2016 from another breakaway. How was that day for you? Because you kind of got reeled back in, and then you attacked again, and that was kind of the race-winning move.
2016 was, I mean, it was a huge breakaway that went. And that day was also one of the days that I had picked that I knew I had a good chance of winning. And yeah, I think, I mean, the first attack was not really, I was not really planning on going from that far out because it was like still 50K to go or something stupid. So, but at the same time, we went for the KOM points. And then I was like, well, I mean, no one's following, so might as well keep going and see if there's the whole group that comes back or if it's just a few riders. And then, yeah, when they all came back, I knew the course and I knew that that last kick where I went away, it was from then on, it was mostly downhill into the finish, like with rollers and whatnot. But it was the longest, yeah, it was the best chance of getting away yet again. So even though it was block headwind on that climb, I still attacked and two guys bridged to me. And then, yeah, we rode to the finish and I was faster in the sprint.
So in 2017, you probably had the worst moment of your Tour of California career. You had very, well, from the TV cameras, it looked like a horrific crash. Could you remember anything of it? Because it seemed like you were concussed at the time, and I'm surprised none of the cameramen actually grabbed you off the road.
I mean, they have a job to do. They don't really focus on other things. The crash, obviously, yeah, it was pretty hard, but I think, well, feel like it was worse on TV than it actually was, but maybe not. I do remember everything up until the crash, but then, yeah, after the crash for like the next 10K, 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes, I don't remember anything. And then again, I have my memory back. So I don't really feel, I had no like psychological impact from it. And like even when we were in the hospital, like whatever, 5 hours, 4 hours later, no, not that long, 2-3 hours later, I was like, oh, let's see the crash video. Because I mean, I hadn't seen it and I didn't remember it. So I wanted to know what happened. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a bad day, but at the same time, I had a pretty bad day also. Last time I did California on the Tahoe day, I was just, for some reason, I just had nothing in my legs. And that actually, in my memory, is a harder day than that crash.
In 2017, you also did really well in the Coppi Basili stage race in Italy. You actually took a stage there as well, and you finished second overall. How was that stage race for you?
I definitely have some bittersweet memories from that because I could have won the GC as well. But a certain rider took me off the road on the final climb on the final day that finished, I don't know, 10K from the top. And by the top, I was just back in the group, but over the top, they kicked again. And there wasn't really a downhill where I could use my skills to get back on, but it was kind of rolly, so I didn't get back on and lost the GC by seconds. So it was a bit painful, but at the same time, it was nice to win a stage for sure.
That year was your first Grand Tour as well. So what was the experience like? How was it like? Did you change your training going into it, and how was it like just racing the Vuelta a España?
I don't think I changed my training much for it, but the race itself was super hard. I'm not friends with heat, and the Vuelta is known for some really hot days. So there were a lot of days where I was really suffering, especially when we were in southern Spain. But then as soon as we'd go up north, I would actually be capable of riding and actually being in the race, not just hanging on for dear life. But it was definitely something I'll remember for the rest of my career. And yeah, arriving in Madrid and arriving there with the whole team as well, it was super cool.
So in 2018, you signed with the team you're riding with now, Trek-Segafredo. What was the culture change from Cannondale to Trek-Segafredo? Because they're both American teams, right?
They both are, and they both are very international. There's a lot of riders from different countries. I think on Cannondale, it was like 16 nationalities. I think first year on Trek, it was like also 18 or something crazy. Well, maybe not that many, but like in the high teens, let's say, in both. So the culture change actually wasn't that big because there wasn't like, let's say, one nationality that dominates and you go from only speaking or only hearing Italian at the table to only hearing French at the table, or being in with a team with a bunch of Germans. So in that way, the culture change was not actually that big of a shock or that different. I think the atmosphere between the riders is pretty similar. However, there's definitely a few things that were different with Trek, and actually in only the good ways, where it was just there was a lot of things that, for example, when we went to aero testing with Trek on the track, we would have like, I think two riders at a time on the track, 4 riders per day, but like 8 staff around us, like insane, where every staff had actually something to do, and it was very efficient, very thought out. Whereas the one time I did aero testing on the track with Cannondale, it was like 1 mechanic, 1 coach, and that was it. So it was definitely a change and a step in the right direction in that way.
So that season, you went to the Tour of California again, and that's where you won your 3rd stage and the polka dot. What was it like coming back to the Tour of California and taking another stage win?
It felt normal. I mean, well, not really normal, but I mean, I was happy to be back in California. I didn't really think about the crash much or at all. I have only good memories from California, because even the year I crashed out and didn't finish, I was still actually on that day. The probability of me winning that stage again was very, very high when just before I crashed. Obviously, after I crashed, the probability was 0. But I was in a great position to win a stage again, and I knew that. I mean, I know that race really well, and even though if you put the race aside, just going back to California, no matter what the race is, I have a lot of friends there. I have a lot of friends in the States, and a lot of people that I have met while I was racing for Hincapie. And just seeing those people and getting to hang out with them days before the race, the days after the race, somewhere in between the races, is actually what really the reason why I go to California, the reason why I enjoy going to California. It's not really because of the race. It's more because of the people, for sure. And I mean, the fans also. It's more about that than the race itself, let's say.
So you also went to your first Tour de France that year. How was the atmosphere there compared to, was it the hype as big as people say, or could you feel the difference between any other race and the Tour de France?
The hype is real, as in how hyped it is. Obviously, it is just a race, but at the same time, the amount of people that come watch the tour live is insane. And the amount of people that follow the race is insane. I didn't really understand it before I did the race, but already in the first stages, just seeing the amount of fans along the road. I mean, there was not a stretch of 100 meters that there was nobody, you know, there was always somebody on the road along the 200K days that we did. And also everyone is so, like, everyone wants to see the race so much that they stand on the edge of the road. And actually, if you think about it, that whenever someone is standing on the edge of the road, then that means you can't ride on the edge of the road because your handlebars will just hit them, because the handlebars go over the edge, which means that actually the roads get smaller even, and the speeds get higher. So that was probably the biggest shock I had, was just how the speeds are so high and the roads are so narrow.
That year, the Tour also went up the Alpe d'Huez. With so much history, how was it riding up that mountain?
Yeah, I don't think it was really the history, but it was kind of, I mean, as you say, a lot of things are hyped up for maybe good reason, for maybe not good reasons. But yeah, again, it was just the people that made it an experience, you know, like going through the Dutch corner, but even all the hairpins before that. It's just crazy how many people are there, and just the wall of noise all the way up the whole time is pretty nuts. And I was lucky enough to not be in a big group, so I actually got to experience it pretty well. And then yeah, by the top, you're just like, your ears are almost ringing.
Did it encourage you with all the fans screaming and cheering you on?
Well, I was also pretty far back, so I was not really trying to go much faster than I wanted to. But at the same time, I mean, it is super fun to have. Without fans, cycling would not be the same. And without fans being on the roadside, cycling would not be the same. So it's definitely sweet to have people yelling at you, people having a good time, and yeah.
So your second season with Trek-Segafredo in 2019, you rode your second Tour de France, but you did a good result in Strade Bianche. Like you alluded to, that Strade Bianche was one of your goals this year. How did you feel that day?
Honestly, I didn't feel amazing, but I knew that race suited me just because it requires just a little bit extra bike handling skills. And seems like I have those a little bit more than most in the peloton. And yeah, by the time it was down to like 15 of us, I was like, oh, this is actually gonna play out pretty well. And yeah, when I realized I could get the top 10, I was super stoked. But obviously, yeah, the wind had gone off the road, and that was another step that I was not able to take that day. But hopefully I'll be able to fight for a win in that race sometime. But yeah, that race is something different to any other race in the year. And both racing on the gravel and racing in Italy and having that finish in Siena is super cool.
That year, you also went to the World Championships in Yorkshire. While that race on TV looked terrible, how was it? Like the rainy conditions? Was it one of the wettest days you've had on a bike?
It definitely wasn't one of the wettest days, because even though it had been raining a lot, and it was raining during the whole day pretty much, it felt more as of a sprinkle than actual rain a lot of times. But just the roads were like with deep water puddles at times, which kind of made it a bit risky. But yeah, I mean, it was a long day and a hard day. And I was very happy at the end of the day, both to finish myself, but also the way the race had panned out for some other riders.
So you had two other Latvians with you, your teammate and also Nielans from Israel Startup Nation. Yeah, I probably didn't pronounce that correctly. Three Latvians who are kind of on the world tour. Does that kind of show that cycling in Latvia is kind of on the rise?
I mean, Emil's was not in the World Tour yet. Neither was Chris's, actually, because Israel is only World Tour this year, and Emil's was riding for a Belgian Pro Conti team last year. So yeah, last year wasn't really three guys in the World Tour. However, this year we are, and it has been a while since there were three Latvians in the World Tour. And it's the first time ever there's two Latvians on the same World Tour team, which is even cooler. Cycling in Latvia is definitely getting bigger. However, it's hard now to see where the next guy is coming from. Like, who's going to be the next one to have a chance at the World Tour. But I think it's just because we don't see it yet. Because there are more and more riders out on roads. There's more and more people just riding bicycles to get across town, which is even better. So I think it'll come, and there's definitely more attention from the media, and there's definitely just more recognition for the sport. So I would say for sure it's on the up and up.
So what's your target for what we hope is a very weird cycling season this year, with the calendar being squashed together?
I don't think you can really target anything right now. For one, the calendar is not really out. For two, even if it was, who knows if it actually will happen. But my hope is that it will happen in some sort of way. Obviously for the sport, because I think that cycling teams need it, cycling brands need it, and cycling as a sport needs racing to happen this year. But I think the coolest thing about racing this year is that it's going to be totally different. Because every year it's exactly the same. You start, the first races in Europe are in Mallorca, the first races in the World Tour are in Down Under, the first classics are in March, the first proper Flanders-Roubaix is beginning of April, then it's Ardennes, then it's Romandy, then it's Giro, then it's da-da-da-da-da-da. And it just goes by the same algorithm every single year. Whereas now, with all that mix-up, it's going to be just chaos, but in the best of way. Like chaos as in, we might be racing the Giro in November. Or the Vuelta in November. We might be racing the Giro in October. And I think that would be super cool, not just for me, because I will hopefully be racing some of those races, but also for the fans to experience it in a different way, in a different time.
Well, what do you think would be the biggest difference with the changing the Giro to October, November?
I mean, for one, obviously, the weather is a big part of what racing is like. So let's say the Vuelta in November or late October, November would actually mean that if I went to that race, I would not die. I mean, Giro in the October is probably not that much different from Giro in May, because I guess by that time I actually probably know, you probably would have better weather in October than in May, just because there's less risk of you running into snow, even though it might rain still, but there's at least lower chance of snow, is at least what I think right now. But yeah, obviously weather, but also just the way the races are going one after the other. Whereas like everyone that prepares for the tour either goes to the Swiss or the Dauphiné, and it's always 3 weeks before, and then there's always nationals in between. So I mean, just the preparation is different. So I think there would be a little bit more unpredictability into preparation, which means unpredictability also in the races.
And final question, riding for Trek-Segafredo, does that mean you get a lifetime supply of coffee?
I wish. But actually, well, I don't drink much coffee. I drink tea a lot more than coffee. But yeah, Segafredo is pretty sweet, and even the distributors in Latvia are fans. So it's cool. And Trek as a company is super freaking rad. I can't say enough good things about it. Just like every year we go to see, or last 2 years we've always gone to see the HQ in Waterloo, and just interacting with those people and seeing how they work and seeing how much time and effort they put into the bikes and put into every single detail is impressive, to say the least. And just how much Trek as a company gives back to charities like People for Bikes and stuff is something I really respect in them, for sure.
All right. Thanks for that. Thanks for a very interesting interview, and thank you for your time.
No worries.